I can present briefly our first speaker is Dr. Luisa Echeverria King. Luisa is a researcher at Corporación Universitaria del Caribe, CESAR, in Colombia, and her research focuses on international higher education and science diplomacy. She is the executive director of Diplo Científica and the vice president of the Colombian national chapter of the Organization for Women in Science in the Developing World. So please, Luisa, we are eager to find out about the situation in academia in your country and indeed Latin America more generally. So please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Radenka. So as Radenka was saying, I am the vice president of the OWSD Colombia, and it is important that you understand what this organization is. This is the Organization of Women in Science for the Developing World, and it's an organization that since the year 1987 has been bringing together women scientists from different regions of the world. Right now, we have many chapters around the world, especially in the global south. The Colombian chapter, we are the 40th chapter of this organization. And basically what we do is trying to promote career development opportunities for women and also networking opportunities. This is a program unit from UNESCO. In Colombia, we have a host institution, which is Universitadores, and we have right now almost 160 members. We have been active since May 2021. I want to share some data about the situation of women in Colombia. Women that do research, that work in academia also. We see here in the first image, in the first graph, that we have a gender gap, mainly in the areas of natural sciences and engineering and mathematics. Here we have fewer women researchers. We have more in the areas of social sciences and humanities, and also health sciences. But here in the STEM areas, we have clearly a gender gap. We have also a call which is run by our Ministry of Science, and this call is done, I think, this data is from the year 2018, and in that year we had 2,282 women and 6,254 men that were categorized or clearly identified in our system as researchers. That means that we clearly have less women in our country that are actually recognized as a researcher. In the second graph, we have here some data that you can see also the information of other countries in the region. Here we have the information about researchers and grantees by gender. The gray is the main information, and the red color is the information for women. And here we see, for instance, in the case of Colombia, that 38% of the women, of the researchers are women, and 62% are men. We can see also that the gender gap is persistent in almost the other countries located in the region. We have, for instance, other countries such as Uruguay, where we have 50-50. That's interesting also. But the gender gap is something which is quite present in Latin America. I will go ahead now. So we have here other interesting data, because we have also some scholarships that are run by our government for master's programs and for PhD programs. These scholarships are mostly directed for those people that intend to do like a career in research. And we see here again some gaps because this data is from the year 2019. And we see that the men in that year, they gained 1,848 men gained the scholarship for master programs, while women, they were 1,567. So we see there a gap which is closer as maybe the gaps that we have seen in the other data, but it's also a persistent gap. And we see also the information for the PhD programs. In that year, 2019, we see that 665 men gain a PhD scholarship, while 373 women gained a PhD scholarship. We also have a program which is called Young Researchers. This program is interesting because we see here other data, and that's something maybe we can discuss that a little bit later, because in this program, Young Researchers, which is sponsored by our Ministry of Science, we see in this data from 2019 that the program has more female than male beneficiaries, and that's something which is persistent over the years. So one can ask themselves what is happening with the women, because when they are young, they are in this career of science, but something happens, and then we lose women during their career development. So this is interesting because these young researchers are undergraduate students that support, researchers at the universities, for instance, and also recent undergraduate students up to 2 years after graduation. So we have here some information about the gender gaps in academia. Less than 40% of female professors in higher education, of the professors are women. Fewer women have access to management positions in higher education institutions. Women have greater difficulties in moving up the academic career, and the production also is lower in some areas, such as the STEM areas. Most of these challenges are related to discriminatory practices in the workplace. We are going to see later also a little bit of examples. The difficulty also of balancing academic work and personal life. And we have here in Colombia, and that's something which is also present in Latin America, we have a lot of social expectations about child and family care. This is something which is called by experts economía del cuidado, or that's in English that would be like economy of care or something like that. And that's a lot of hours that the women invest in that, and that's socially like really socially expected that the women support their children, and also there's, for instance, the grandma or grandpas that live there, that they also care for them. So we asked our members at the OWSD Colombian chapter what it's like to be a woman scientist in Colombia. We asked them here, I have organized here some of the answers, because we had, of course, some answers that were, expressing the challenges, of course, and others that were like more oriented to recommendations, for the future. This first answer was regarding the situation that we have in Colombia, a lack of resources and funding for science, and that's something which is quite present, not only for women but also for men. And we also have a centralism. With centralism, we mean that if you are located in the region, for you, it is more difficult to access, opportunities, to access funding, to access networking if you are not located, for instance, in our capital, Bogota. And women have more difficulties to access, of course, these opportunities and strategic alliances, because for many projects, you need to have like strategic alliances in order to apply for funding. That's why our ministry says. We also face sexism. We call it here machismo. There are people who do not take women professional criteria seriously, and that's something which is present, and do not trust their leadership. That's something which is present here, and I can say not only in Colombia, but also in other places of Latin America. Lack of recognition of the work, fewer citations. That's something which is also that we can also see also in academic production. Many people have written about it. Gaps in the career because of maternity leave, and social expectations of family care for women. That's something which is present, as we have seen during the presentations. Some recommendations also from our members: we must overcome these gender stereotypes and also recognize the work of women scientists. Right now, we have in Colombia interesting programs that are also recognizing the work of women scientists. We have like a program financed from L'Oreal, which also gives prizes for women scientists, and also other prizes run by academic organizations. We should contribute to our area of knowledge, or to the area of knowledge to which we are passionate about. I mean, not everyone is passionate about all the fields, so we should find our field and be passionate about, and really motivate other people to participate in research, and of course leave a footprint for other generations. That's something which is important, because within our organization and also other organizations who also organize events and promote science in Colombia, we want to really leave a footprint for other generations. Quick about the situation in the OWSD Colombian chapter. We have colleagues with chronic stress. That's something which is present. We also had a colleague that suffered a heart attack, which is quite young, under 40. We have also permanent concern about job insecurity. That's something which is also, I think, present in other parts of the world in academia. Because many people don't have like these positions that are like for the whole life. We have positions like for 1 year, 6 months, or something like that, and that's something which really concerns a lot of people. We have also colleagues that have reported to being victims of abuse at work, especially sexual abuse, and imbalance between personal and family life as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. What have been we doing at our Colombian chapter to create like a safe space where you can talk about the situations that you live on a daily basis? That's something that we created with the support of ReMO, which is called Café con Formación. Café con Formación is a virtual space where you can come and express the different situations that you are living, and that can turn into emotional exhaustion about time. It provides relief because you have here a community of women. You can receive some kind of trust because you are sharing your feelings, your thoughts with other colleagues. And this space is led by a colleague which is a psychologist, And she also gives some tools in order to face the challenges of everyday life. That's something that we have been doing quite a while right now. And it's a space which is really expected because many members don't have other space to come and share their thoughts and the situations that they are in. So that was our experience from Colombia. Thank you very much. We are very excited about this and to hear also the situations in your countries, to share thoughts, and also to see if the gender gap also is present in the other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luisa. That was a really excellent presentation, and I'm happy to see that you have this Café con Formación working well. That's really great. So we will leave the questions for later, and now we'll go to our second speaker, Ms. Tiffany Sprague, who has worked over the last 20 years in tackling a diverse range of social issues in the US, Europe, and Central Asia. Her interests include governance, entrepreneurship, the gender mainstreaming of STEM education and careers for girls and women, and the utility of tech for good. She co-founded the nonprofit Scientific Adventures for Girls and currently works for the gender team at the UNDP in Istanbul, coordinating the STEM for All platform. So Tiffany, it's a pleasure to have you here today, and please, this virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. You can see my screen and hear me, okay?
Yes.
Super. Thank you, and thanks for the presentation before. It's interesting to see that there are similarities across the globe. So yeah, so anyway, thank you for inviting me again to be a part of this important discussion. Like Radenka said, my name is Tiffany Sprague. I'm a gender specialist with the United Nations Development Program based in Istanbul. And I'm the co-coordinator of a fairly new digital platform called STEM for All. And we collaborate with UNICEF also in the Europe and Central Asia region to populate the content and just oversee its activities. And the platform aims to increase the share of women and girls in STEM education and careers. So it focuses on STEM, but it obviously relates to research as well. In our region, just to give context, covers 18 countries in and territories, including Turkey, the Western Balkans, Central Asia, South Caucasus, and the Western CIS, that's Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova. So mental health in academia, it's an important issue, and it gives me a lot of hope that networks such as, my colleagues here and just ReMO exist because it's important to provide this space to have safe discourse on this very serious topic. And to raise awareness that, as I said before, these issues know no boundaries. It crosses the globe. And that's pretty impactful too, to know that we're not all alone. So open discussions and sharing of experiences of these challenges in academia are really key to building positive and inclusive academic cultures. So today, I'm not an academic, but from the development practitioner's perspective, I'm going to present the status of gender equality in STEM with the focus on the Europe and Central Asia region. And then I'm going to follow that by highlighting key barriers to women's advancement in academia and the main drivers of exclusion in STEM fields. And then I'll share with you our digital STEM for All platform. It's a tool, as I mentioned, and hopefully you can use it too, because it is focused on Europe and Central Asia, which probably is relevant to people here today, but we also include all global perspectives, such as today's. Yeah, and I'm going to help highlight some best practices in confronting mental health issues and well-being in academia, including storytelling, advocacy, and collaboration across sectors. Okay, so just to give some context, if you don't know, the UN Development Program supports countries to develop strong policies, skills, partnerships, and institutions so they can sustain their progress. So as part of the work of the Gender Equality and Women's Economic Empowerment team at the UNDP, supporting women in STEM is considered a viable pathway to their economic empowerment, as well as critical for better innovation and economic growth. Because as we all know, STEM, they're skills that are in high demand and worldwide and considered skills of the future. So knowing that there are gaps in STEM and in STEM research, this is something that we're very much hoping to close the gap in. So we conducted research on the status of gender equality in STEM first to help design the interventions. And here we define STEM as technical roles in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this infographic here shows the share of women and men in research in natural sciences, engineering and technology, medical and health sciences, agriculture, and veterinary sciences. So it's important to note here in our region, there are varying levels of patriarchal societies, underrepresentation of women in political roles, and opportunity gaps created by the transition to market economy in the former Soviet republics, which has impacted the status of women and girls in STEM. So if you look at it, and some people will say, well, it's not terrible. I mean, there's some gender parity, especially you see a little progress in Central Asia and South Caucasus and Western CIS. And some of this can be attributed to the legacy of the Soviet Union when communist regimes made it a national priority to advance both men and women in science. But however, when you dig deeper and looking at data sets on gender parity, starting from primary school to employment to decision-making roles, you see a diminishing representation of women, and just as Louisa had mentioned, all the way from education to leadership roles. So when you look at these percentages, it doesn't really give an accurate representation of like power dynamics, how many women are actually in leadership roles. In fact, some of these might be more representative of women who have less responsibilities and also get paid less. So gender disaggregated data, as you all know, is academics in leadership, pay gap, retention rates, and it's pretty hard to find, and especially in this region. So before sharing the types of gender discrimination in academia and links to mental health and well-being, I think it was important for us to understand what were the actual, key barriers and social and systemic barriers that impact women and girls. And we realized that a lot of these key barriers impact the way that girls identify themselves as, as a STEM professional or just identify like as scientists, aspirations and skills development. Gender norms in many societies result in women and girls being expected to put home and family ahead of education and career. Cultural and social practices limit career options for women. Education systems and schools play a main role in shaping girls' interest in STEM subjects and in providing equal opportunities, access, and benefit from quality STEM education. However, though, teachers, curriculum, textbooks, they all tend to also expect boys to go into STEM, with textbooks having just pictures of men and, fewer women, or teachers also having these biases, like girls should go into humanities and arts and boys should go into STEM. It's getting better, but these are still quite prevalent, especially in rural areas of our region. So for those women who actually choose a STEM path in university, for them, there are fewer women professors in STEM faculties and can kind of serve as a disincentive. There aren't very many role models. They don't have very many access to mentors. Maybe their families don't actually support them, as well as STEM environments when they go and they're the only women or a few women in the lab. So it's dominated by men. So these are major obstacles for women. And then when you move to the workplace, being the only woman or one of the few women in STEM can be intimidating. So lack of diversity and inclusion strategies creates these isolating, unwelcoming workplace environments for women, affecting job satisfaction, retention, and opportunities for upward mobility. And without the social capital, such as mentors and networks, which are necessary for advancement in their careers, women tend to leave their jobs. So those who stay often find that their progress is stalled, while men advance to tenure and decision-making positions. There's like lack of childcare support or inflexible work schedules that make it very hard for women to advance. So you can see gender compounds the discrimination that women may face in the workplace. Gender discrimination tends to be tolerated in this region, with Bosnia and Herzegovina the only country at the time of our research whose constitution even has sexual orientation as a ground for discrimination and its anti-discrimination law. And then sexual harassment, although sexual harassment is considered illegal, access to justice throughout the region, it has varying levels of success, but it can also be quite hard. And similar to what Louisa was saying, trust in leadership and trust in, you know, these policies, it just kind of deters women from reporting such cases. So I also had a chance to interview some women researchers throughout the region and who have validated our research and these key gender barriers and say that it has impacted their health and well-being. I spoke with a chemical engineer in Kazakhstan. She was also a PhD student, and says, in addition to sexism in academia, ageism in Kazakhstan plays a huge role. So then if you're being a woman, a young woman, that's like double whammy on her. She found it very hard to be taken seriously, she said. She actually found out she was getting paid less than her counterparts. She was even more published. She was often given the administrative work in her lab. And she thinks because of being a woman, and although she was lead author on some publications, her name was always put last. You know, the person that was the eldest had their name that was prominent on the publication. A professor from Kyrgyzstan, she teaches at Bath. Now she left Kyrgyzstan. She stated that although there tended to be gender parity in chemistry, she stated that women must really work. She has seen that women have to work harder to prove themselves than men. So when she was going for tenure, she had very mixed feelings. She was told that she wasn't going to make it, that she had to have 55 publications, but she knew for a fact there were other colleagues that had like 40 or 45. And so she felt like the criteria for her, and she attributed to being possibly a woman, was different for her. But having mentorship and having a lot of support from within her department, she persisted and she got tenure. And then I also found a nonprofit. It's based in France, but it's global. It's called Mothers in Science. It's actually very interesting. She co-founded it, and membership represents mostly academics and research and people who are her mothers. And they also come together and talk about the challenges that they face. I interviewed her for a podcast, and she said microaggressions and gender stereotypes led her to leave academia altogether. She called it the maternal wall. She said women with children with good intention were often told, hey, it's okay, you can leave the lab early. I know you got to go pick up the kids. But for her men counterparts that also had children, were never told that they could leave early. So already it created this divide in her lab, that women were expected, that they were assumed to be the primary caregivers. She wasn't invited to dinners with collaborators because they just assumed that, it's at nighttime, she'll probably have to go home. So she wasn't invited. So this lack of networking and social capital really impacted her. People didn't take her seriously, and she felt like it was stalling her progress. So she decided, after a lot of reflection, that she was going to leave academia. Advance. Okay. So now we know that these, there are a lot of, oh, sorry, this is not the right one. Yeah. So we know that these inequalities existed pre-pandemic, and we now all know that the COVID-19 pandemic completely made everything worse. And the COVID-19 is often referred to as the she session or the mom session. It struck the world, it worsened the gender equalities, but it impacted disproportionately women in the workforce altogether. In fact, 45 million women worldwide left the labor market completely. Research has found that mothers shoulder the caregiving responsibilities during the long school and childcare closures. And as a result, women felt pressured to work nonstop, finding it hard to put boundaries on work and life, or reduce working hours to juggle homeschooling and caregiving. So in our region, it ranged from reducing hours by 31% in Georgia to 65% in Kosovo, or women just quit altogether. Preliminary studies have shown that unpaid care work impacted the number of publications and grant funding amongst women. The Mothers in Science co-founder even told me anecdotally that she felt like men actually published more during the pandemic because they felt like the school closures you know, being trapped at home gave them more time to actually work on their publications, because then women were able to just shoulder the care, doing the homeschooling and all the different care responsibilities. The implicit and explicit gender bias in academia, compounded by the impacts of COVID-19, are linked to burnout, stress, feelings of stress, isolation, anxiety amongst women. So the World Economic Forum just published their latest global gender gap report, and worldwide, the gender gap in stress levels widened from 2020 to 2021, with women experiencing more of the stress. And that's not just in academia, that's just, you know, throughout. So action has to be taken to prevent women from leaving research in STEM, not only for their well-being, but also we need women's voices in research, in innovation, as we transition really quickly to this digital world. So to support women and girls and to increase the share in research fields, UNDP and UNICEF in our region joined forces to develop this STEM for All digital platform. We conducted user research, and it turns out that women and girls want to connect and hear from one another. So just like this Café Conformación, just like ReMO, I mean, people love and feel better when they're able to discuss things, you know, these challenges in safe spaces. They want to see more women role models and have mentorship. And they also want to share their own stories and inspire others to pay it forward. We also know that making any transformative systemic change takes collective coordinated efforts in the entire ecosystem. We can't do this alone, right? So UNDP and UNICEF, we're leveraging our expertise and our ability to convene strong networks of institutions, policymakers, private sector, NGOs. We have our offices and the, you know, country level to accelerate gender equality and the representation of women and girls in STEM to meet the demands of the future work in Europe and Central Asia. So we need all hands on deck to advocate for more public funding for a care infrastructure, more flexible work arrangements and family-friendly policies that not just women take, right? We also need them to encourage men to take advantage of this remote working. You know, I think I read an article the other day that remote working is might just benefit women, and that will also just lead to more exclusive divides between women and men. So STEM for All is a space that serves the public interest. It's a virtual space for advocacy, research, news, resources, and networking to promote gender equality in STEM across the region. And just quickly, so it's like this marketplace of sorts, right? So if you're interested in advocating or interested in gender equality in STEM, you come here, you can get database of current status of women studying STEM. So not just where data is available, right, by country to understand what the situation is. You can also come here and look at research and publications, policy briefs, you know, why are women underrepresented in STEM to get the full picture of why there's such gender disparities. And here we've got sections, we've got Meet the Inspiring STEMinists. So we have stories of women throughout the region. We have a podcast called Chats with STEMinists. So if any of you want to be on the podcast, I'm happy to interview you and also share global perspectives. And we have blogs. It's an open space. So if any of you have stories you want to share or things to put on to our STEM for All platform, please reach out afterwards. And we have an events database. So things like this, like I put up on the put on our website. So you can see like what are the events and activities happening throughout the region. And then finally, this might be of interest to some of you. We have what we call the STEMinist Network, which Radenka is part of. And we've really we're trying to scale it and try to build this out. So what it is, it's not just academics and researchers or people in STEM, but it is people throughout the ecosystem. So we have people that represent government, NGOs, CSOs, academics, all to come together so that they're able to exchange knowledge, pull resources, and share best practices across borders and cross sectors. So yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of positive stories out there. And I think what gives me hope too is that I think younger generations are not going to be as tolerant, I guess, of these exclusive cultures, but we need also people in leadership to listen and So we need to do more advocacy, flood the internet with positive stories about women and girls and research and the business benefits, so that everyone can buy in and really, work towards an equal future in STEM. So thanks for your time. If you have any questions, happy to answer them at the end.
Thanks a lot, Tiffany. This was really great presentation, and I hope that our participants will visit STEM for All platform and join the network. So we are going on, and our final speaker today is Dr. Jenny Lindell-Nako. Jenny is the regional coordinator of EURAccess Worldwide and the chair of the MCA Southeast Asia chapter, an NCP of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, the vice president for Asia Pacific of the Global Women Inventors and Innovators Network, founder of Girls Congress, a board member of the Association of Young Environmental Journalists, and a member of the UN Steering Committee of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women. So as you can see, she wears a lot of hats. So Jenny, thank you for staying up late for us. You have, I don't know, what is the time now with you? It's late, no? Yeah. So you have plenty of experience to share with us from the perspective of Southeast Asia, and please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Radenka. I'm very happy to be here, and it was such a pleasure as well to listen to Louisa and then to Tiffany. So as I close the presentations today, since I'm the last speaker, for those of you who are joining us, just joining us, because I see that some people just popping in, we are actually tackling two huge issues. On one hand, we have gender in academia, but on the other hand, we also have mental health in academia. So for my presentation, I'd like to focus on giving you a glimpse of some of the countries. Of course, you know that Asia is huge, and Southeast Asia also very huge and very diverse. So I will give you a glimpse of experiences from the countries, and then also on the results of our listening sessions with scientists and researchers, and then offer to you some initiatives which we have had the experience of looking at positive results, and lastly, some recommendations on how to move forward. But first of all, I remember I was 16 years old when I first heard this line: when you educate a man, you educate an individual. And when you educate a woman, you educate a generation. And so this was coming from a female professor that I really looked up to. And I felt that it was really reflective of, on one hand, the responsibilities to rise up to the expectations of society, but also to rear those that are next in line for the next generation. So let me share to you my slides so you can look at what I am sharing. I hope you can see that. Okay, all right. Okay, so I wanted to share this as my first slide because I just found this today. There's a data, the data on loneliness from Gallup's Global Emotions 2002 survey show that 330 million adults go at least 2 weeks without talking to a single friend or family member. 1/5 of all adults do not have a single person they can count on for help. Also, remarkably, people who are miserable at work are statistically more likely to experience negative emotions than someone who has no work at all. I thought that was interesting to look at being happy, what it really takes to be happy. And I want to bring that to this discussion now on women in academia and research. If you look at Asia, Asia actually lags behind much of the rest of the world, with women representing just 18% of researchers, according to UNESCO. The Philippines and Thailand, Philippines is where I come from, lead in Asia, with women accounting for more than 45% of researchers. In the Philippines, of more than 2,100 higher education institutions, 39% or 850 institutions were led by women in 2011. So we're quite high up there. And of course, Tiffany was talking about the global gender gap. We're always in the top 20 for the most years in the top 10. We slid some steps, I think, a couple of years ago, but still one of the leaders there for the Philippines. I give you the example of this survey. Sorry, of this article from Surinder Pal Kaur, and it's talking about gender and leadership in research universities in Malaysia, the case of the University of Malaya. In this research, it says that in multi-ethnic and multi-religion Malaysia, the main issue that arises is not just a case of men academic leaders versus women academic leaders in the Malaysian higher education context, but rather it is a case of which men and which women leaders. So here, what it means is that it's not only just gender, of course it plays a role, but also political affiliation and race. So the intersections between gender, leadership, academic and social capital, race and power relations, as well as political affiliation, make the issue of leadership and gender in higher education in Malaysia more complex. And I'll discuss why I put that into perspective in this presentation. And if you look at Thailand, and again, I cannot tell you everything about all of the countries, but I hope that this is enough just to give you a glimpse of, especially here in the region. With Thailand, for example, if you do a web search of 109 Thai universities, it was found out that there were 24 female university presidents, 673 vice presidents, and a spattering of assistant presidents and deans. And research of Pumpilay, Buasuan, and Ratikorn Niyamajan on the glass ceiling facing women leaders in Thai higher education show that the norms and values of Thai society play a major part in shaping the views of what roles women should play and how. So from this perspective, social norms and gender role expectations prevent Thai women from having a psychological orientation conducive to motivation, self-confidence, and aspiration for leadership positions. So gender roles, according to Sodha, expectations compel Thai women to put family and childcare responsibilities ahead of their careers. So there is also another challenge here in academia, and this is also on bridging the digital gender gap. So a while ago, Tiffany was sharing to us this incredible platform, STEM for All. And here we see that there's also, gender gap, and there's also, I highlighted here, cyberbullying and women oppression online. And the ILO has identified unpaid care work as the biggest impediment to women's formal employment. So I think Luisa touched upon this about the care economy. Essentially, women are in the care economy, and usually this is something that slips through the cracks and not really being given, the emphasis when it comes to how it affects women in general, especially in the work and in academia, as we are discussing today. It says here globally. Sorry, I missed the part of the internet supposed to be like the other side. This is what happens when you are jet lagged. So this is actually connected to the internet. So globally, only 57% of women were using the internet by 2020, 54% only women. So why this is important? It's important because, access to information, of course, is critical, especially when when you find positions, or when you want to when you climb the ladder in your career. It is very important to get, of course, digitally connected. I did some listening sessions, and I did this because I'm planning to write either a research or maybe a book together with some of my colleagues on the experience of women in academia and also as scientists and researchers. Over the course of last year, especially at the height of the pandemic, we did listening sessions on the challenges that women academics face here in the region, including researchers and scientists. And here are the results. One is a lack of mentorship, a lack of a clear career development plan, obstacles to achieving tenure, being granted promotions, The other one also is earning the respect, especially from male colleagues. And again, and I highlight this, is all in caps, and it was also discussed by Louisa. One of the critical issues exacerbated by the pandemic is women in the care economy. Underneath that, job insecurity is also an issue due to gaps from maternity leave, also to take care of elderly parents, and also gender stereotypes and culture-based expectations. And here I highlight three things that come from time to time, especially as the discussions get deeper. One is on the issue of harassment and abuse. Some of the abuses come in, in microaggressions, or maybe things that somehow get just swept under the rug because it's banter or something, but still considered already as abuse if you really dig into how it is being done and the power dynamics that are involved. Also, and it's very important that we discuss as well, for women researchers, their fear of not being good enough. So sometimes when there is a position, they don't want to step up because they feel they are not ready, or perhaps there might be responsibilities at home that might come up and they think that they might not be able to rise to when the occasion presents itself. And lastly, also of guilt. Many women say that, well, they don't want to be vice president of the university, or they don't want to be the principal investigator of a research project because they might not have time for their kids, or they might not have time for their partners as well. So the result of this is that it manifests in stress, psychosomatic problems, skin allergies, heart problems, and obesity. So these are my recommendations from those from the discussions that I've had, and this is also emanating from what women feel from the advices that they would want to give to women researchers and scientists like themselves. First is, of course, that we have to realize that we should, when we do research, we should do more than hitting the numbers and more than statistics. So more than numbers, but more on people. Second is, we have to ask ourselves, what do we really measure? When we measure about stress, in academia, for example, or the gender perspectives when it comes to mental health in academia, what do we really measure? And does it really capture actual realities on the ground? Does it, for example, take into consideration cultural and religious and even societal implications, or the ecosystem of research that's very, very different, very, very unique in every context? The next is that I think it's about time that we have to break silos. We can't just listen to ourselves, to academia, speaking to academia, or those in business, speaking to those also in business. I think the way for us to break this stigma is to really listen, to engage, and interact with allies outside of your discipline. Find out, the experiences as well for those maybe doing development work, like Tiffany, those who are also, from other genders as well. And another important thing also is, we're talking more about women today, but we have to also make sure that we remember that, there's a whole spectrum when it comes to gender, LGBTQIA, and there are more. I think we have to make sure that we recognize that there is this diversity that we have to understand. And there are lived realities that we also need to understand in academia, in science, and in research. One very good example, which was just given to me just recently, and it really makes me think, and I'm sharing it to you now, is we have to ask ourselves as individual scientists and researchers, who do we surround ourselves with? And how diverse is our inner circle? When we talk about mental health, when we talk about creating an enabling environment for us to be the best of ourselves and also our colleagues, it's important to know this, how diverse our circle is, who we surround ourselves with, and who do we trust, essentially. Next is also to reassess the notion of publish or perish in academia. There's a lot of things that we can do better when it comes to this thing. And I think, when it comes to evaluations, when you talk about success of a researcher, of a scientist, what does it really mean? Is it only about publishing, or what else can that be? So not numbers, but people, not a one-size strategy, but context is very, very critical. And one of the activities that we've had, so now I'm going to give you initiatives that I think might be of interest to you for inspiration purposes, for the Women Inventors and Innovators Network and the MCAA and Euraxis. We had a talk, and we try to do this every year, of women in science and research. It's really on, you know, listening and sharing, just as this, sharing of experiences on women in science and research. And here, I don't know how much time I have, Radenka, if you still, can you still allow me to play this one?
Yeah, sure.
So this one I think is important because it gets you to listen to perspectives of women who are actually scientists. And we did this during the International Women's Day last year.
To me, what makes great scientists is definitely passion and love for science. Science is for everyone, both men and women. Science is not defined by gender. To be a good scientist, one needs to always be very curious and determined to find an answer.
My favorite scientist is Tiffany Sprague because she's a very good scientist. She won 2 Nobel Prizes, and also she's a good mother. She raised 2 children. So I think that it's very, very cool because, however, to do both of these is not easy. The character of woman that make them scientists, I think the first one is curiosity, and then the second one is greed. Greed is the passion to reach the long-term goals. And the third one is patience, and I think that it's easy for us as a woman to have this kind of patience.
Based on my experience with an EU-funded research grant, I was given great opportunity to work with research partners across Europe and also across the region. This was before the pandemic, so our team was able to go there and work with the host institution. We managed to create wider professional network that also enhanced our career as researcher. Not only that, I am now currently active in the Alumni Association, which is the Marie Curie Alumni Association, and we still get these networking activities from time to time.
My message for the future women in science is to always fight for their ideas and always make their point of view.
Women have been at the forefront of scientific discovery and seeking solutions to complex global challenges every day. Science needs women and girls. We need to change the world for the better.
This is just an example of inspiring, more women to get into science and making them believe that they are a part of this powerful group, And one of the things that we also want to do, and we've done this for the past 2 years, is to invest in especially in young women, in the youth. And we have this Girls Congress, Girl Make the First Move. So this is just some snapshots, as you can see, and we are encouraging them, of course, to become scientists, or at least be encouraged to have their disciplines in STEAM. So I hope that they continue with this. We are in batch 2 already. And I leave you with this, because this we just did under Girls Congress. We had a session on mindfulness and self-love. And it was really something very, very important. And I think we women, especially the women here, and the spattering of men in the room as well, mindfulness, I think, and self-love is really something that it's not just, it's something very, very important, and sometimes we neglect it. I know a lot of you want to go to the spa, especially since it's summer in Europe. This is a different kind of spa. It's called the Mind Spa. And this is initiated by a friend of mine who is now based in Switzerland. And I give you some tips on easy ways to be more self-aware, that she says, to have daily self-reflections, to write your feelings down, to meditate, to ask for honest feedback, and to explore your limiting beliefs through coaching or therapy. But I would like to end it with basically, you know, by Rumi, because I love Rumi. Rumi said, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself.
Thank you so much, Jani. This was really beautiful. And